Who is going to show the
We're ready. Thank you very much for being with us today at lunchtime. But we are also live, and this event is live and being streamed. It is integral part of the exhibition, Mystic Properties, and I invited 4 projects, let's say, to be discussed here today, because all the projects have one thing in common. They need a different medium than the exhibition itself, than just display. They need, let's say, more contextualization, more explanation, and more discursive approach. So I invited 4 artists whose project need, let's say, this different medium of conversation. And every time I invited this artist, I invited a partner, let's say, who would lead the conversation with the artist about this specific project of the exhibition, but also about the practice of the artist in general. I would like to start with Vermeir Heiremans, a duo working in Brussels, and Hampus Lindwall, who is here in his capacity of collector of contemporary art, who has a very interesting collection, who collects immaterial work. But Hampus is also an accomplished musician. I am very happy and grateful, Hampus, that you agreed to be with us here. And I would just suggest that you begin.
Well, thank you very much. And I would actually suggest that you begin, because I would like to, as Elena said, I'm a musician, but I also collect art. So my approach has been maybe a little bit different in the way that I was from the beginning with my collecting totally okay with the idea that I'm not collecting artifacts but intellectual ideas, and which is the same with music, because you cannot own music, as you know. You can only own rights to listen to it, and so I would like to you to describe first your project, and then we can discuss in detail maybe the different parts of it.
But maybe we can show the index. Is it possible? Okay.
Oh, it needs to be the index, art house index.
You can already explain.
So basically, what seems to be relevant to know is that in 2006 we started working as a duo, and at the time we were reconstructing an empty space, a bit of a ruined space, working together on building our house, as it were. And in the end you get so tired building a house that we needed some refreshment, not only physically but also in our brains. And we were reading a book called Loft Living by Sharon Zukin, which speaks about cold water flats in New York in the late 60s, early 70s. And instead of describing this usual avant-garde story about artists appropriating space in empty warehouses, she was explaining actually how a policy of de-investment in industry created a problem for the capital that got stuck in these buildings. So the question was how to make this capital, this money, profitable again. And she was explaining the whole stream of monies and how law was actually adapted, zoning laws. In the beginning, people couldn't live there, only artists, but they had to do one thing. They had to put a placard at street level. And on the placard was 3 letters, AIR, artist in residence. Now, we all know what an artist in residence is. It's just a formula that you can work outside of your usual context. But at the time, it meant something else. It was actually there for the fireman to know, in case of an emergency, that this abandoned warehouse, that there was somebody living there, artist in residence, and they needed to go in to rescue this guy. So we thought, wow.
Ronnie, I think we have to be a bit shorter. He's doing a whole lecture. So I'm going to explain quickly about this, because this is what we want to have the conversation about. So Ronnie was talking about the house, which we said...
Duos.
No, we said, okay, it's going to be our artwork, and this is the basis of the work, so everything we do will rotate around this house. And one project we did was the Art House Index, because we went to bankers and we asked them, like, it's so hard to live as artists. Is there we own now this house, but no money. How can this house generate some flow of income? So maybe that's a bit naive, but well, we went to the bankers and we started this project. And then they came up with crazy ideas, but we, in the end, we decided together to make an index. So, so the idea was to make the house liquid, like, so you can generate a flow of money. And then the Art House Index, an index is a form of measurement, so it doesn't indicate a price or something. It's measuring our value, symbolic value as artists, and also the value of the house, and the value of the house that is an artwork at the same time. So the parameters that went into the index are like everything we can find on the internet. So it's real estate values worldwide, or in Belgium or Europe. So you can find all these indices and values on the internet. And also art values, but more in general, the art market in general, and also confidence in art. There exist indices on the internet that measure if people have confidence, if the art market is going up or down in the next 2 months or something. And then we also value the attention that we get as artists. So if you have a show in an important city, then that's more valuable than showing, I don't know, in a small village or something. So, so people looking at the websites, our websites is one parameter. People looking at Vimeo pages, watching the films. So that's all the parameters that go into this.
So you say that the house is your artwork, but how does it manifest itself as an artwork, the house?
Well, that's why I started this long story. I'll continue. It's not really the house that we live in, of course. It's the house is a starting point, but people can't visit the house. So we decided to build mediated extensions on this house, which means that we come up with ideas like a performance or a talk or a publication or a film. And these extensions, they basically create a discursive version of the house worldwide. So we made a short publicity clip in which you see the house, but also these views. It's in the show, actually, all these views in different places in the world where we ever showed work or produced work. So you could say that the house becomes a discursive, there's a discursive version of the house. And art, all art is discursive. Even paintings are conceptual in our mind. And it is this discursive version, this virtual version, that we actually put in this index. So it's not about one physical house, it's about how this one physical house became or masquerades as an artwork, and we inject our symbolic value as artists, our careers, into this physical house. And that's how this thing, by defining it, because performative language means by saying it, it starts existing. By using this performative language, the house, which was starting as a normal house, became something else. And the index, in fact, is, like Kathleen says, is a measuring tool. It's not a price index, so it's just a marker. It's been running since May 2015, following all kind of movement in world markets. But at the same time, we started thinking, well, it's there now. What can we do with it? It doesn't make us any money, even if it goes up. And actually, it's not so important going up or down. You can short the market or, you know. So we started thinking, how can we use this thing? And so we thought maybe we can try to build a market around it, a market of futures and options. But you need a license for that. That's a regulated trade. So that's not really, we can do it like, how do you say it? Over-the-counter market?
Yeah, we can. You can build like financial instruments on the basis of this index. So then people could bet like if the value or symbolic value is going up or down. So you can bet in both directions. Like if you bet that we are going down, like apparently we're doing now, and if you bet in the right way, you're going to win some money.
So I think it's okay to understand that the publication or a picture, for instance, would be something that one could appreciate as an artwork. So how do you, I don't know how to formulate this. I want to, so that it's clear how this gets together and how to experience the artwork. We have to experience all the different performances, aspects, and photographs or movies, etc., that you have produced. Maybe you can say something about this. To really grasp the work. The one, if one now considers the house or as your work, but you can also say this is your work, your œuvre in that sense, and then the house is part of it. But if you now focuses on the house. Is that clear? I mean, it sounds like I wouldn't understand myself if I heard this, but
well, the house is basically a regular middle-class house, kind of loft, as they say. There's nothing special about it, actually, but it becomes special by the way we use this piece of real estate. And what we actually investigate is the dynamic between art, real estate, and economics. And of course, this is actually visualizing this. So it's actually it becomes an instrument to speak about the work, but also actually to generate the work. Because while we were building this, we did a performance as a first version to go into the details how we constructed it, and then that was a one-on-one dialogue with a banker in Skype. And after some time, we thought, well, maybe we can rewrite this dialogue and make a multi-voice piece of it. So we made a film on this index. And in the end, we decided, well, the film is just a film, but there is a live version of the film possible. So now we made a film that is generated live by the performance of the index. If the index goes up, you see a finished film. If the index goes down, the film immediately switches to its rehearsal version. And the people in the film either miss their lines, or it was shot in green key, so if there's 20 people in a scene and you go to a green key, then it's one actor in front of a green key, and it's like... So it's really intriguing how this mechanism becomes, actually includes exchange in art, like the statute of the artwork, the selling or the... It's actually a mechanism that plays on that. So, and that made us also think, well, if we ask for a fee, why would we ask for a regular fee? We ask for a basis fee and then apply the index to it with a time delay. So if the institution would give us €1,000, there would be a quote, okay, times 1.44, so the price would go up. Or if they're lucky and the index goes down, they need to pay less than 1,000. So we are thinking about all these different mechanisms, how this thing could actually continue performing. It's a very performative piece, basically, because we are not in control of this. This is a huge market. So also the film, in terms of film, when we screen the film, we can't really control which version of the film people see.
What could you explain, perhaps, to give an example? I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. So, what happened to the index since you are here at Art Brussels? Can you
Well, today is Saturday,
Yeah,
and then the markets are not open. So in the weekend, it's taking the information of the last day when the market is working. So that's why on Saturday we have a flat line. But when we were here 2 days ago, it was nicely going up. So I don't know, maybe something in the market happened. Or Bitcoin crashed or something, I don't know. Because it's also fluctuating with these kind of things. So we can nicely see that it's not only our value or what people do, but it's also the markets that you see reflected in this index.
So in that way it becomes a continuous live performance of the whole, well, world is a big word for it, but people active in this market actually define what it is. And that's what we found interesting to make that version of the film, which unfortunately we can't show here, it's a bit too complicated, but you actually give away a form of authorship, basically. You're no longer in control of what you're doing or what the work is, and it becomes co-constructed, co-created with its audience.
So here we are clearly out of a system where a collector or institution, a museum, buys a piece, or could you say that that because at some point all this has to be also archived and preserved for future generations, how would you then what would you present then? The concept of the physical house, is it important, or is it more description of the program, the performance, or?
Basically, we have files. So the film is files, basically. But you could say that this really nice we're meeting you, actually, because as a custodian of internet-based art, this is an internet-based thing. It's an algorithm on internet. So you have to rent a space. You have to make sure that the files are functional, are working. So in that respect, it can be transferred. It's also public at the same time. So we're
maybe
really
we
intrigued.
can ask you how you see that, because we thought, being a custodian of artwork is it's something very special, and so maybe you can talk a bit about how you see that.
Yeah, this is because we spoke a bit about this earlier. I have collected some websites that are works on internet that you can everyone can visit, and you can look at them, and they are files. So you go on to a special website, like fallingfalling.com, for instance, is one that I have bought, and you have the piece. You see the piece, and then when buying this, I established a contract with the artist that I will take care of the domain name and renew it every year, and see so that it still exists, and pay every fees that are involved, etc. And also, when there is important updates of browsers, it's my duty to see to that the files are upgraded, so I can also they still function. I mean, now it's okay because most of the artists are still alive, so it's easy to they do it because they do it best. But at some point, one also has to think that one has to mimic what is happening with another type of code, because for instance, it was written the falling that I mentioned was written in Flash, but now it's converted into HTML5. So things like this will happen many times during already during our lifetime, but mostly after, of course.
So that's our hope, that we meet a custodian for the work on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, it is also something that gives you access to a piece that is not really available. We can't show it, it's live. So this means that there is something else in between this index and the files of the film. And you could say it's like a light switch. The light switch actually is a key to the live version of the film. And thinking about, okay, exchange and relationships with art, and we're not really so much into a deal, you know, like here's the deal and it's done. We're more interested in building relationship long term, which means like in film anyway, you, as Hampus also said, you, for music, you give access to rights, which means you give a license. What do you want to do with this film? You want to screen it privately for your friends, or you want to be able to screen it in a museum as owner of this piece. So these all are legal constructions. We're also very much interested in contracts, all these kind of things. These legal constructs actually define what the relationship between the artist, the piece, and the collector is. And that's super intriguing because art is not something that's just there. It is a very artificial environment. It's a very discursive environment. And that's why we kind of are looking for ways where the exchange actually becomes part of the work. And the work itself is the exchange. That's very tautological. That's very self-reflexive. But in the end, that's what it is. That's also in life, and especially in finance. Thinking about finance, that's totally a tautological construction. Fiction builds finance, and finance builds fiction.
I think this is a great, very clear closing line, but we perhaps have 3 minutes left if there are questions, because I would like the audience to react, because for me, the interest was this double meaning or triple meaning of property you have in your work, and which relates obviously to the title of the exhibition and to one of the, let's say, topics of the exhibition. Are there questions?
Okay, sorry. You use the index as tool for when you make a contract with for a lecture, for example. You do it really.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That just to be clarified. Yeah.
You can't really know.
Sorry?
You can't really know, can you? Contract is between two parties.
Yes.
But it's yes.
But you imply. Yeah.
Yeah, so the closing word, then it would be that I think this is a very interesting example of an intellectual idea and property that is defines in a very well something that we also have one with a sculpture, because if we buy a sculpture, we buy the concept and the idea, and it's not because I have paid the money to the artist that I can print T-shirts with the sculpture and sell them for money, because we don't have the and that's it's not very far actually the idea of art in that sense, that it's always about ideas, I would say, and I think this is a great example of this to illustrate.
But how important do you find still having the property of a work that is accessible for everyone and open, like the real ownership?
Yeah, the ownership is with the internet. If that was an internet-related question, yeah, that's also stipulated in the contract that the internet works that I own, they are to be free access for anyone. That's the nature of the work. So it's as an artist told me once, that it's like owning a sculpture in a public park, a public sculpture in a park, so that the $50 every year of internet fees, it would be the equivalence of going to the park and polish your sculpture every day so it looks nice for people who goes by there and see it. And then internet is the the biggest park in the world, and you want, of course, your work to be seen as much as possible. So that's why it's such a good place to have it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.